I need a bike.
Daisy, go to the design house. They've got a patent office there, patent office.
When traffic's choking the city, the quickest way to get information and ideas across town is often on two wheels. And one place to take a bright idea is the patent office. Every year, tens of thousands of people come up with new inventions. What's to stop somebody else just from pinching your idea? Well, there is a way. You can pay to have a legal document drawn up. One of these, a patent. And this is proof that it's your invention. There's thousands of them over there, and that's just 1 week's worth. And this is where they're all stored, in the vaults of the British Library. They go back over 300 years, from soap to flying machines, from toenail clippers to radios. They're all here. And look, here's an early bicycle.
I've been a cyclist 50 years. I'm a non-smoker and teetotaler. I go to bed early and there's no monkey business.
Inventors have tried all kinds of bike designs. Some never got off the ground. But these days, bikes are very different. This one helped to win an Olympic gold medal. So what makes a winner? Well, it wasn't just a special bike. It took a special rider, too. Chris Boardman was the champion cyclist, and he was trained by Peter Keane.
My job as a sports scientist is to train and assist the body that actually propels the bicycle. For many months he had to train in preparation, and we checked his fitness progressively and knew he was in the best form of his life when he left. Now, I know you've had to train for many months to go into space. It'll be interesting to see how your fitness compares to Chris's.
How do we do that?
Well, first off, you'll have to get on the bike.
OK. I'd always thought cycling was about being out on the open road, so I wondered why we were indoors.
The reason we've brought you into the laboratory is that out in the field, when you're riding a bike, so many different things can affect your performance, whether it's hot or cold or windy or wet. In the laboratory, we can control all of that and see exactly how fit you are.
It wasn't like any bike ride I'd been on before. Peter wired me up to machines. I had to breathe through a tube. Finally put a peg on my nose. And all that was before the test started.
All you've got to do now is concentrate on the screen and work harder as the computer asks you to work harder, until you can't do any more.
Oh, great. Well, I was pedalling quite hard, but the bike didn't seem to be going anywhere.
All the power you're producing is being used to drive a fan very, very fast, and that's simulating the effect of actually riding your bike out on an open road. The reason we think the power is so important is that it's ultimately the power that you can put through your bicycle to your back wheel that will push you along the road. So the more power you produce, the faster you will go. Okay, now you're over 130 watts, so that's about the power you'd need to do about 16, 17 miles an hour on a flat piece of road.
And that didn't seem such hard work. So what stopped you just going faster and faster?
In most cycling events, the power that you can produce is limited by how much oxygen you can get to your muscles, and that's why it's so important that we can collect all the gas that you're breathing out to see how much oxygen your body's actually used. You can see, Helen, you've now completely filled a 200-litre gas bag in just 5 minutes of collection. It's a huge amount of air your body's had to breathe out to cope with the load that we're putting you through. I'm now having to collect in the second bag See how much oxygen you're using now. Now soon into the test, your body will start approaching its limit in terms of how much oxygen it can use. That will cause your legs to start to hurt, and that will eventually lead to the fatigue that will stop you in the test. But you're okay now.
It was getting harder though, and I could feel my heart pumping away quite fast. The monitor showed us exactly how fast.
Your heart rate is now double what it was at rest. Your heart is having to pump more and more blood to get more and more oxygen to your muscles to produce the power that you need. Okay, Helen, you're doing really well now. You're well over 200 watts, so your heart rate's now getting higher and higher. So let's concentrate now, keep working.
Oh, so Pete, how did I do?
Well, let's see what the computer says. 209 watts is your maximum power, so that's very good.
Well, I've entered a mountain bike race next weekend. What advice would you give me?
Well, the test says you're way above average fitness. The most important thing is to get a bike that's right for you, though, so make certain you're on a bike that fits you as the right size. Start steady and see how you go.
Peter lent me a portable heart monitor. It works by picking up electrical signals from your heart to measure how fast it's beating. So now I could check on my training scientifically. But for the race, I was going to need an all-terrain bike. And they knock out a few of those here. And that's just in 1 year. Where do they start?
Well, an all-terrain bicycle is like any other bicycle. It's human-powered, so one of the first considerations has to be you, the rider. We've got to make the thing fit you so that you are comfortable on it and have proper control of it.
It was time to visit the bike shop. I've come to be measured.
Right, step this way. Okay, I've warmed up my equipment.
The equipment looked pretty gruesome, but accurately measuring a complicated shape like the human body isn't as easy as it looks.
Relax your arm.
Where does my arm start and stop, for example? They measure to the nearest millimetre, so they have to make sure it's between the right places. But why do they need so much information?
The length of the trunk, that's from the hip pivot to the shoulder pivot, is the length of the top tube.
If you can guide this to the top of your chest, save me puncturing a lung. That's it.
The inside leg measurement is proportionate to the length of this seat tube.
And this?
That is to do with the length of your thigh.
Makes sense. So what's next?
The second thing we've got to do, of course, is to design the structure to transmit your power into the back wheel so that you propel it efficiently.
A badly designed bike frame would bend and flex under conditions like this, wasting the power you're putting into the pedals. So how does Gerald make sure his new bike designs won't bend?
You can't just give the bike to a rider, because the rider's view may not be scientific evidence. One rider can be very clumsy with a bicycle, another rider very gentle with a bicycle, so it isn't valid testing.
For scientific tests to be fair, they must be well controlled. But they've also got to represent real life.
So obviously a bicycle gets a lot of banging about. And, of course, you've got the rider pumping up and down with the pedals. These put all sorts of forces in. Then we replicate these by putting the same forces into the thing, the same banging and crashing, with machinery. That gives us a fair test, which will imitate what you were going to do on the bicycle when you were riding it on the road, but a lot worse and a lot heavier.
The bikes take a real pounding. What makes them so strong?
We use materials which are strong and stiff. And the way we use them is really quite simple. It's the shape we make them in that is important, as well as the material we make them from. This is a sheet of paper and it's rubbery, but if we roll it into a tube, all of a sudden it becomes quite a stiff thing. Now, if instead of using a sheet of paper we use a sheet of steel, you can imagine just how stiff this would be.
So it's tubes that make mountain bikes strong and light, but tubes aren't necessarily right for every bike.
Tubes are fine. When they're circular, they're very light and strong, but of course they don't pass through the air very well. It's a very bad shape for moving through the air. What you need is something in the shape of an aeroplane wing.
Mike Burrows is an engineer, but he's also into bikes and trikes. He's tried all kinds of ideas to go faster. This one has a cover, which helps it slip through the air easily. It's an idea he borrowed from nature. Animals are adapted to their environments, and rhinos need to be tough. So nature builds them that way, just as mountain bikes are built to be tough for their environment. But underwater, fish are perfectly designed for swimming, and it's their shape which lets them slip through the water so easily. Fish are streamlined. Their shape is long, thin, and rounded, and that means they hardly disturb the water flowing over them, so the water doesn't hold them back. And streamlining works in air too.
I've been designing different sorts of bicycles over the years, and what I discovered simply by using them was that the streamlined ones went the fastest. Getting the air out of the way is a problem, and the smoother the shape, the faster you go.
Mike didn't get there straight away, though. Starting with a classic racing bike design, he tried different wheels in a new frame. It was an improvement, but he reckoned he could do better still.
What I suddenly realised was what you actually needed was, if you like, a tube that was the shape of an aeroplane wing and a bicycle at the same time.
And it worked. But without tubes, none of the bike firms were interested.
I mean, I'd had the basic design for the bike for 10 years. Then a friend of mine who worked for a local car company said, can I take it to show them it works? I said, yeah, fine, if they want to look at it. And that was it. They saw it, and they saw what others had missed.
Richard Hill saw the genius of Mike's idea. He's an expert in aerodynamics, and aerodynamics is the science of airflow.
Well, my normal job consists of fine-tuning the airflow over sports cars to get the most out of them. And to do the same thing with a bike seemed like a pretty good idea.
With a new set of handlebars, Richard and his team kept the same overall shape as they put together another version of Mike's bike. But they needed to test it scientifically. So they went to Myra, where there's a special laboratory called a wind tunnel. Here, there's no need to actually ride the bike through the air. Instead, giant fans blow air past the bike under precisely controlled conditions. That makes a fair test for streamlining possible. But how could they see what was happening?
The thing about air moving past an object is that air is invisible. You can't see it happening. So to get a better appreciation and understanding of what the air is doing and how it's moving, we visualise the air by using a smoke wand, which forms a trail of smoke. to see where the airflow remains attached to the body of the rider or the bike and where it separates away from the body.
And the bike was very streamlined. It hardly disturbed the airflow at all. But what difference would a rider make? Chris Boardman was Britain's best hope for the Olympics, and the bike was made to measure for him. Even his helmet was designed to be streamlined.
Is that about right?
Behind Chris, the airflow was a little disturbed. But at the front, the new handlebars worked very well. They put Chris into a position where the air flowed smoothly over his whole body. It looked like they were onto a winner. But how much faster would streamlining make the bike in a race? Richard kept careful records of all the tests, so he could predict how well the bike would perform. But there was only one real test. On the day, it was all down to the rider, Chris Boardman. The combination of Chris and the bike brought home Britain's first gold medal for cycling in 70 years. But what about my race?
Tomorrow's race.
You're doing all this in your living room, aren't you?
Yeah. It's quite warm in here. Just want to put your coat.
Great, thank you. Caroline Alexander is one of the country's top mountain cyclists. So, what are you doing now?
Just taking this block off to put a different ratio on. There's going to be some steep hills tomorrow.
So that you want to, what do you mean by ratio here?
Well, the size of the cogs and how close they are together. Well, that's my big one. There's a steep hill. And they go down in order of size. Obviously, you can't put a small one on next. You have to put the next size down.
This is all going to help you get at the hills, but
That's
obviously you're going to
right.
want the bike to be as light as possible. What can help you make the bike light?
Well, there's a lot of titanium used in my bike. Everything on it is very lightweight, so that I can have as light a machine as possible for the climbing up the hills.
I've entered a mountain bike race. What kind of advice can you give me?
Most importantly, enjoy it, because there's no point in doing it if you don't. But just to take it easy at the start and don't feel intimidated by anything. If there's something that's quite steep and you're not sure whether you want to ride down it, then just get off, because you won't be the only person. There'll be plenty of us walking down with you.
It's going to be scary going downhill.
Yeah, there's sometimes a few drops that are a bit frightening.
Caroline hadn't prepared me for everything, though.
Numbers on right. Okay, just join the grid at the back. You're going in 5 minutes after the men.
This was where I was going to test both myself and my bike on a course 12 kilometres long. I hadn't expected so much mud. Already, Caroline was way ahead of me.
Must be an easier way.
By now, I was feeling quite tired, so my legs couldn't produce as much power as at the start. But the gears helped me manage the power I was producing. When I had to work hard to go uphill, there was less power left to go forwards. Changing to another gear made it easier, but now the bike didn't travel so far for each turn of the pedals.
This must be the finish now.
Caroline came first in her class, but some only just made it. So what's the big thrill?
Mod's my best conditions. Well, my brother taught me into it. I enjoy it though. It's really good fun, like mud and all that.
And Caroline was the new national champion.
And I wasn't very confident.
But while she was being interviewed, I was still stuck in the mud. Everyone else had crossed the line hours before me, and by the time I finished, the crowds had all gone home. But I made it in the end, and with a good excuse.
One broken chain. Broken chain. Lots of mud.
You're right.
Lots of mud, lots of scratches. And I'm soaking wet. But it was fantastic.